Good evening, Galaxy fans. Hello, Galaxy fans. Welcome to El Trafico Radio, or more like the E Network for tonight, if you catch my drift. But my name is Mike Gray. I'm the Galaxy. I cover the Galaxy and LAC for the Striker. Joining me tonight is my faithful co-host Alex Ruiz. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
Could be better, man. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Alex off camera let me know that he's got a small case of food poisoning. So if he happens to get up for some reason, we all know what's going on, and then I'll take over. So
Yeah, it's
we're,
not been very, very nice. It also hasn't been very nice in the LA Galaxy whole thing fan base lately. So definitely lots to talk about today. That'll at least help me feel a little better. Or will it? I don't know. We'll wait and see.
it's been a messy past few days, so everybody expect a messy podcast because we're going to be all over the place and we got a lot to cover. So first of all, let's talk about Monday. The transfer window came to a close April 24th, 10 p.m. Central Time exactly. It was a bit anticlimactic if you're a Galaxy fan because you had been hearing for weeks optimistic statements from Vanny speaking about how there were all these choices and it was just a matter of, there were Champions League spots, there were promotion, relegation battles, all sorts of excuses. And then in the morning, the Galaxy actually traded something like 150 and change in GAM to New York City FC for an international slot. So everyone got all excited. And then the Galaxy signed two 2023 Super Draft pick in Gino Vivi. So, Alex, was this the plan?
It's definitely interesting because you do sign a winger. So I mean, you do that. Is it the quality guys who kind of use this move? Vivi's not going to get much playing time if we're going to be honest. It's going to be really hard for these super draft picks, especially on the LA Galaxy, to get quality minutes ahead of players who the club have heavily invested in, like Douglas Costa, Tyler Boyd, Efrain Alvarez, right? Like it'll be hard for to see him kind of get those quality minutes. But hey, anything's possible in this sport, and if he can, strap himself by the boots and work to get there, then that'll be a great story for everybody. But definitely a little underwhelming considering some of the targets that Galaxy were trying to get. There were rumors that Paul Arriola was a player that they were targeting as well. A guy who's done it in MLS, who's last season had a career year with FC Dallas. It was always going to be hard to pry him away considering Dallas, I think, gave away a ton of GAM for him last season. So Galaxy would need to give it even more to Dallas. But nonetheless, just the kind of the theme of this transfer window. I kind of wrote about it in my article, kind of analyzing the transfer window for the Galaxy. Like this team has missed out on a bunch of winger targets, and once again, they kind of have to settle for something that may not be to the par or to the pedigree or standard of the LA Galaxy.
Yeah, let's be candid about Vivi. We saw him in preseason. He wasn't someone who looked like he was going to take anyone's spot anytime soon. I had a fan asking if he might be available for Orlando during the weekend, and then my first response was okay. But Vanny didn't even select Efra for the pass game, and I don't think this dude's ahead of Efra on the depth chart. So there was speculation that the international slot might be used in the summer. Say, for example, if they want to which might bring us to our next topic. But if they want to bring in someone domestically, then they can still do that. Alex, you were right. The Galaxy tried to bring in Paul Arriola. They tried, and then FC Dallas said, "No effing way. He's one of our star players. You are going to give us a truckload full of GAM. Otherwise, we're not even going to pay attention to you." So, for me, that's where my skepticism comes in because Vanny was selling us on the idea that in the summer transfer window, there's a lot more movement. A lot more movement means there's a lot more players available, and therefore they have a shot at somebody. The Galaxy need the type of player that they're looking for is a star winger, someone who can step right into the club and make an impact. And you saw what happened with Ariola; they flatly rejected the offer. So. Alex, let me put it to you. Do you think that it's realistic that the Galaxy are just going to find, a fantastic winger in the summer, one way or another?
I mean, I think the possibility is there, but is it achievable? That's the real question. I think there'll be players within the league that will be available. Somebody that they can trade for, somebody that they can maybe look at of interest, somebody who maybe is losing their starting spot but could provide something to the Galaxy. There's definitely that possibility, and I think, the club left themselves enough assets to kind of go out for somebody within the league. I think the Galaxy could find somebody, but again, it's just a matter of time. And again, it's the waiting game, and that's something that isn't very sure and very concrete. So I'm just hoping from what they've signed, the players they've signed, that they're likely switching to a formation that uses wingbacks to create that depth, that width. They have plenty of fullbacks, and heck, they added a new one on the deadline day as well.
Yeah, Mauricio Cuevas, the former Galaxy Academy product. Uh, I heard that described as righting or wrong, so it's a little unfortunate that they had to bring him back in the first place, but it's good that he's back. And that sort of ties into something you asked Vanny at the presser, which was, talking about his young back line. But we can talk about that a little later. Let's get to the main kind of attraction, the main thing we got to talk about for tonight. Now, before we get started, we've been very careful in the past talking about how when we discuss the boycott, we don't want to, what's the word? We don't want to sensationalize what's going on here because, I mean, just candidly, I used to be an ACB member. I have friends in the ACB. I have friends in Lars. I have friends in all the supporters groups. I have friends at Galaxians, dating a Galaxian. There's a lot of, there's a lot of, there's a lot floating around, and I don't. We have to ride this line of not offending anybody, but also kind of getting to the point. And I mean, I have a column called the Gray Area, and that's because I talk about nuances and I talk about things that are important. And so, let's get right to it. Sometime before Wednesday morning, the Angel City Brigade, one of the supporters groups of the LA Galaxy, they put it to a vote and they decided that they were going to return to the stands. So Wednesday morning, our good friend Rob Halone over at Last One on Soccer and LA Taco, uh, he actually uh, he actually reported that the ACB had decided that they were going to come back to the stands. Now, this was a leak. This wasn't supposed to be reported. So when it came out, oh my God, did Galaxy Twitter turn into a cesspool? There was finger pointing, there was accusations of backstabbing, and by the time 1 p.m. came out, the ACB actually put out a statement describing that, again, official statement saying that they were going to return to the stands, but basically it was due to concessions and the fact that they were going to also be bringing the protest itself into the stands. And that was their sort of logic. Now, immediately later in the day, you had the Galaxians, the Riot Squad, basically the four other supporters groups. They all, and I'll just list them: Ghost Ultras and Galaxy Outlaws. They all put out their own separate statements saying that they would not return to the pit, or excuse me, to the stands May 6th. So uh, it was already pretty bad. And then this morning we woke up and there's something about a tax bill. Alex, can you talk about it a little further?
Yeah, I just want to go back saying, this boycott, no matter what was going to happen, decision to come back, decision not to, is going to be a huge reaction from the fan base. Because again, this is an unprecedented moment in the LA Galaxy's history with the supporter groups and the fans. Obviously, this is going to be a big deal for everybody who's involved, not involved, people on the outside, people on the inside. This is going to be a headliner for so many people who follow Galaxy. And am I surprised that there was a big reaction, positive and negative for ACB coming back? Not really. I knew someone was gonna have to blink. Somebody was gonna have to make the first move. ACB decided that this was the right decision as they held an internal vote between their members for it. If that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do. But like you mentioned today, it looks like there was a tax file kind of. This isn't anything sketchy or legal to do. These documents are public domain. People can find these. People found documents of ACB about the current. I think it's how much they owe. Mike, if I'm correct, how much they owe to. in taxes, if I'm correct. I forgot the total amount it was, but it's not a good amount.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the filed wrong. I think it was instead of doing it as a nonprofit, they screwed that one up, and then also just some people speculated it was merch and that it just piled up over the years, and that's how it got to that 30K number. Now, I do want to get to the nuance of this because you're right. When the tax thing came out, there was a big reaction, and a lot of it was accusations, right? So allow me to explain. Just candidly. I've heard rumors for years about the tax bill, that the ACB was having trouble with taxes. And to be fair to the ACB, I'll just cut it off right there with the speculation because there's other rumors, but they're like, they're not ones that I would personally put out there and then say, there's truth to them. So I'm not going to repeat them because that's kind of cheap, right? But um, now, a lot of people, if I knew about these rumors, it's fair to say that a lot of people knew about these rumors. So when the tax bill specifically when that came out, it was very much like a smoking gun. Like, oh my God, like there's something to this. Now that I've said that, I'm going to point out specifically, there's no evidence whatsoever that the ACB and the club are in some sort of cahoots with like financials or anything like that. No evidence whatsoever. We're not saying anything. Our friends aren't saying anything. That's just not like a narrative. But I do think that again, the ACB. Uh, it's difficult, but I do believe that they do deserve some criticism. And uh, for example, the fact that they made a side deal and they negotiated with the club without informing the other supporter groups. That to me was a mistake. I think that there is legitimacy to the idea that what they were doing was united and that they had this united front. And it's okay to negotiate with the club separately, but to not tell anyone and to sort of keep people in the dark, that breeds mistrust. And my initial reaction was that I thought that was sketchy. And so they do deserve criticism for that. Now, some more nuance, some very specific nuance. The LA Riot Squad. I don't know how many people know this. It's fairly common among supporters, but it's kind of an interesting story. At some point, the Galaxy, they wanted the LA Riot Squad to move out of their section. Big reason for this is because they have premium seats, but they actually pay below board. They actually get a discount on their seats, even though they're kind of on the lower bowl. Even though they're in the technically in the corner, but they're still good seats, right? And again, there's been I talked about this on the last broadcast just to put into perspective the idea that you have these elite supporters groups around the league, like what's going on at LAFC, and even places like Orlando, like where the Galaxy are going to play this weekend, where you have just sort of one united section, you have the standing supporter section, you have this sort of diverse set of chants, and it's very next level, and so the Galaxy maybe they want Victoria Block to become their own version of that. So anyway, back to the story. It was 2019 before the season started. There was a meeting between the supporters and the club, and at one point, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the big man himself, they had him put it to the LA Riot Squad, and actually he directly asked them, "Can you guys move?" Now, what I thought was really funny was that the LA Riot Squad flatly rejected the offer, said, "No way, no way, buddy, we're not going anywhere." And I thought that was very brave of them. I'm not sure I would.
I would not tell that to Zlatan to his face, man.
I'm telling you right now, I would have told Zlatan like, "I'll think about it." I would have told him no. I would have copped out or something. So you're right about that, but if you're the LA Riot Squad, you have a lot to lose with this boycott potentially, because if things go too far south and no one's in that section, the Galaxy they could potentially make a move and suddenly decide that they want that section for themselves. So for the Riot Squad to have that sort of very real danger, and then to find out that that the ACB had been negotiating with the Galaxy without telling anybody, that has the potential to compromise the united front, and it makes the whole boycott weaker.
Yeah, I mean, look, this no matter what's gonna happen, like I said, it's gonna be a pretty big deal. Whether ACB comes back, whatever happens with LA Riot Squad in their section. In my first article covering the boycott, I talked to Andrew Alessandro, president of LA Riot Squad, and he told me like, look, for us, this is a big risk too because he knows, and he kind of mentioned it to me earlier, alluding to it in that piece, that their section isn't necessarily safe from being there all the time. So that's definitely something that they're kind of risking by not going to these games, and we've kind of seen that in the last couple of games where LA Riot Squad is filled with more casuals than it is with passionate supporters. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's definitely a big difference from what we've been used to in years past. So, like I've said multiple times, I'm just waiting to see who moves. It's like a game of chess when both people are kind of just playing it out. Don't want to test the waters too much. Someone's gonna make a move, somebody's gonna make a blunder, and we'll see what happens. So far, I think ACB is kind of being a little bit aggressive on wanting to go back to the stands, which is okay that they decided to do that themselves within their group, and that is totally fine. Obviously, the other groups have said they're not going to follow, so it's just going to be up to is ACB going to be able to hold that going forward, or are they going to be able to be the only present there at the stadium? Because I'm just looking forward to see what the reaction is from the supporters on their first game back. Again, it's just a lot of unknowns and a lot of we have to wait and see what happens.
Oh man, imagine being Chris Klein. You just get right back in the office and you're already dealing with a supporters boycott that's starting to spiral out of control. And sort of a nuanced point about the concessions. I have the concessions. It's mostly supporter stuff, but the one thing that I thought was pretty interesting was it's difficult to talk about this stuff because an email saying that Klein is going to depart if the Galaxy don't make the Western Conference semifinals. That's not a statement from the club. That's not like ironclad, right? But it did say in the email, and that was one of the big talking points, is that he did confirm if he leaves or if the Galaxy don't make the Western Conference semifinals, that he will leave the club. And so, if you're Klein, how are you not under like a serious amount of pressure right now? Because, I mean, as much the Galaxy won, right? But it's the first win of the season. They played almost a quarter of the way through. They have no summer transfers. They're very limited in that sense. And they're in a position now where they're just going to have to climb up the chart and somehow, you got to win two games to get to the semis. You're going to have some sort of home field advantage. And, right now, it's not that that there's like a huge gap or anything, but the window for error is just getting smaller and smaller. And, he's got to deal with that. And then he's got to deal with this boycott. And by the way, the boycott's starting to get to the point where it's affecting the Galaxy and AG's bottom line, which is the almighty dollar. So he's got all these fires he's got to put out. So, as I put in the piece, if there's ever a time for Klein to prove that, as an executive that he's worth his medal now, now's the time for him to prove it. So, but let's move on because the Galaxy do have a game to play after all. They are playing this weekend. That matters, right? And guess what? They got a real opportunity here, Alex, because Orlando, they're not really doing anything right. They've actually, well, to be more specific, there's not a whole lot that they're doing very well. They've lost three straight home matches. Uh, I've watched a couple other games. They don't seem particularly threatening in attack. You can beat them in transition, particularly if you get the ball wide and spray it down the middle. They're very vulnerable at that. Uh, and interestingly enough, for whatever reason, despite having like a couple of huge dudes in Vincent Janssen and Antonio Carlos, they've been really susceptible on set pieces. So even without Riqui Puig and even with the long layoff, this is an opportunity for the Galaxy, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right. This is a team that's underperforming at home, and I think underperforming in general. I had Orlando City heading into this year as one of the upper echelon teams in Eastern Conference, but they haven't played like that. Their wingers Facundo Torres and Martin Ojeda, like they're big names that the club has invested in. They haven't really been able to produce together and provide wins for this team. They've scored goals and had assists, but it hasn't led to team success. And I think that's such an interesting thing to note considering that the Galaxy right now feel like they're in a decent groove where they're finding each other. Obviously, the suspension of Riqui Puig doesn't really help with that momentum, but still, definitely interesting to note that Orlando's struggling on that front. if you read like my keys to the game, I write up before every single game in the last couple of weeks. They've been pretty right. I'm just gonna say that out there. Like if you read those, you'll see what happens on the pitch, and you can definitely see where my analysis and where I'm kind of seeing the Galaxy going from. For me, one of the big things I'm gonna hone in on is the wing backs because, like I said, Ojeda, Torres, they're players that haven't been able to be dangerous all the time, but they're still high quality players. We saw Julian Aude go higher up the pitch and kind of have Caligari as a right-sided center back. How often does Aude go forward knowing that Torres is probably going to try to exploit that space? Same thing with Caligari. Can we see him, try to be like a center back instead of kind of pushing forward a bit at times? It's definitely interesting how Vanny's going to rotate this, but I think this game is going to be won and lost in the wing backs. Whoever allows the most space, whoever can take advantage of the space, and I think that's where the Galaxy are going to need to succeed without Riqui Puig, knowing that he's not going to be there to kind of pull the strings in the middle of the field. If they can at least take advantage and defend and attack through the wings, they'll be fine in this game, and I think they'll create plenty of chances. Again, this team just needs to be more clinical in the final third, and we'll really start to see some momentum really start to build for this Galaxy team.
I look forward to seeing Memo Rodriguez play. Vanny, when asked about Ricky Puig in the presser, he simply said next man up. And to be fair to Memo, he's been miscast this entire season. I mean, we were both very high on him. Me personally, I still am because I mean, when you have a guy who's playing out of position, you're not going to get that peak player performance. And then also, this team was crap for the first 6 weeks or so. So I understand how he might have been doing his best work. Now he gets a chance to go back in from central position where he prefers to play. Again, Orlando are a team who did, despite Torres and Ojeda, it's interesting that it's almost like the Chicharito Joveljic problem, where you have two talented attackers who just don't fit together very well, and you can kind of collapse on them. And then the only their bright spot is oh man, I'm forgetting his name, Duncan something.
Duncan McGuire.
Duncan McGuire. There we go. 3 goals in 6 games. He provides a nice number 9 presence. The fact that he in a way is their most dangerous player tells you about their attack.
He's their Dejan Joveljic coming off the bench and scoring these goals. So if you want an analogy, there's one right there.
That'd be nice to see Dejan on the score sheet, wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, I remember they were talking about that pass last week, and I was like, or they were talking about, I was I knew that was a pass. So when it took like a day from him, I go, wow, that was really nice. No, it was a pass. Trust me. And maybe I was a little bit harsh on him last week because I said that, he had kind of a mixed performance. He was excellent for the team. We just want to see him, it's weird. Last year, he was very individualistic. And then now you're starting to see him, with this 5-3-2. Now he's starting to become more of a team player, but now we want to see those individual instincts come out. So it's going to be very interesting. But
yeah, I think it will definitely be a interesting game to watch considering Puig isn't going to be there. Like you mentioned, Memo Rodriguez is likely going to be in the middle of the field. I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of see him combine and work with Gaston Brugman and Marc Delgado. I mean, they provide an excellent pace to the game and to the midfield. I think having Rodriguez isolated on the left side or right side whenever he played didn't get the best out of him. He's a guy who wants to combine with other players, exploit space. Obviously, he doesn't have the pace and 1v1 ability to play on the wings, but he's still plenty creative enough to kind of make the right pass here and there and position himself in good areas. And if he's able to play the Riqui Puig role where he's kind of drifting out left and is allowed to kind of roam around near the final third, I think he'll have an excellent performance and really be a difference maker for this team. Because again, there's nobody like Riqui Puig on this team, and honestly, nobody in the league that's like him. But if Memo Rodriguez can at least be able to pull the strings, be able to find good spaces to run into, and help stretch out this Orlando back line, then I think the Galaxy have a real good shot here. And it's not to put too much weight on his shoulders, but I mean, he's going to play a critical role in this game if Galaxy are going to come out with a win.
Yep, dictate the game through possession, pull Orlando around, maybe score a goal off a set piece. I think that they can. I think they can pull off the shutout. They just need to get that one goal. You were talking about creativity. Douglas Costa, the Brazilian man of mystery. Apparently, it's weird. We were just talking about he should never see the field again, and in principle, I still feel that way. But I mean, he has one good performance, and all of a sudden we're starting to wonder again. But I mean, man, it's so weird having these unpredictable players on our on a
Yeah,
team. You know,
Costa's like an enigma at
I
times.
can't.
You
I can't.
you
How am I
don't know
supposed to say
what you're
anything
gonna get.
positive about him? I can't. I'm just like, do it for 5 more games, buddy.
Yeah, do it as a starter, not in the
Yeah, I
last
know.
15 minutes.
Let's see
So,
60 minutes.
I don't know. I think Vanny might. I think he's likely going to trot out with the two striker setup. I don't see why you would change that. I think it really gets your best players on the field and really takes advantage of the best position the Galaxy have, which is their wing back. That's where they're really strong and they have a lot of potential there for growth. Douglas Costa in that 4-3-3 and Tyler Boyd, I just don't see it working out. I think Vanny's current system that he used last game really got the best of the Galaxy and helping them kind of get on the front foot when they're in possession. Um, just it's going to be interesting to see what Douglas Costa's role is because I really wouldn't be surprised if he's a player that comes off the bench to kind of do what he did the last game where, he's somebody who can run, somebody who can be creative at times. He had 3 chances created, which was tied for first in 30 minutes played. So that's a positive sign there. But again, if you want to see some sustainability and consistency, I think him coming off the bench gives you that. Him as a starter is just too inconsistent. And again, he's not the type of player to play 75 minutes a match. He's just not that at his career. Hasn't really proven that at the Galaxy. So if Andy's going to use him as a sub, a super sub, I think that's honestly a great decision by him and by the coaching staff.
Well said, Alex. And you know what? I think that neatly summarizes what's been a fun little podcast. So tell you what, everyone. I think we'll give Alex a break. 6:58. We'll leave 2 minutes early so we can go do our own thing. Corner of the Galaxy's coming up 8 o'clock. Be sure to watch that. I'll be there in the chat. Other than that, I guess Alex, you got anything else to say before we take off?
Just gonna be an interesting game, and check out my keys to the game coming out Saturday morning on match day. So definitely something to keep an eye out, and definitely gets your mind ready for another Galaxy match day on the road in Florida in 80-degree weather, 77% humidity, 50% chance of rain. It's gonna be a crazy game for both on and off the field. So
Subscribe to the Striker, everybody. Subscribe to the Striker. Don't be cheapskates. All right, take it easy, everybody.